I have been trying to perfect the art of contemplation for over 30 years now. And after all this time, my immediate response to those times when my prayer collides with my ego is defensiveness, judgment, and control. On those rare days when I am open, undefended, and immediately present, I can slip into a contemplative mindset and heart. But most of the time, I must work to get there and to end there. It often takes a second or third look to get myself to the center of my prayer, without the distractions or the defensive needs that often bind me and blind me. For me, contemplation is an hour-by-hour battle. I rely on those moments of formal prayer, the daily morning, midday, evening, and before we go to bed prayer that keep me from falling into the pit of self-interest that often dominates my fragile, smaller self. I rarely begin my prayer settled and composed. I'm often too preoccupied with the weighing and feeling of my own hurts and my own emotional responses to them. I often begin my prayer wondering, how will this affect me? Or how does my self-image demand that I react to this? Or how can I control this situation? This self-preoccupation keeps me from entering into communion with the divine presence that I am seeking. After 30 years of prayer, I have come to see this struggle to get past this preoccupation with the self is something we all face. We must first feel our feelings before we can relate to the situation and emotion of being with God. Only after God has taught us how to live undefended can we immediately, or at least more quickly, find a place of balance in our prayer. Prayer acts like a fulcrum, where even a small amount of faith at one end can help move a mountain of hurts, sins, sorrow, and pain that we accumulate. Once we get through our preoccupation with the self, we can enter that place of stillness and peace that we are looking for. The fixed point of our prayer is our place to begin. It is a contemplative stance, steady, centered, poised, and rooted. To achieve it, we must have a slight distance from the world. We must allow time to withdraw from our usual routine so that we can enter into what Jesus calls our private room. This is not escapism, for even as we take a step back from the world, we remain close to the world, loving it, feeling its pain and its joy as our pain and our joy. The fulcrum, that balancing point of prayer, is rooted in the real world. Even though contemplative prayer is thought of as spiritual and supernatural, it is also very down to earth and practical. It is a different way of receiving the present moment and understanding it and its impact on our hope of eternal happiness. We need to create some space to distance and detach ourselves from all those false illusions of self that are supported and promoted by the culture we live in. Contemplation builds on hard reality, as it truly is, but stripped of its selfish ideologies, self-fantasy, and self-denial. Unfortunately, many of us have trouble finding a fixed place to stand where prayer can act as a fulcrum that provides critical distance. Because of the pressures and stresses of the world we live in, we have not built into our lives the habit of practicing spiritual exercises to keep our sight keen and alive. Even those who seem to have plenty of opportunities to develop strong spiritual practice, like a priest, often can't see past the culture of religion that they live in And so they struggle to find a context in which to speak or to serve the needs of those mired in the culture of the world. We all need to develop a prayer life that provides ways to bridge the two and connect them. I have spent a lot of my own prayer life trying to do just that. I am always trying to learn, to take in information about the world. I want to understand life. And I like having a theoretical explanation about why things happen the way they do. This understanding makes me feel in charge and in control. But I most often learn about life from a distance, as an observer, not as a participant. Sometimes I think understanding life is as good as living it. It has been a difficult journey for me to learn that life must be studied, but it also must be lived. The practice of solitude and silence helps me to integrate those two things. After 30 years of practicing contemplation, I sense that my critical thinking and my need to engage life more fully are finally starting to come together. I'm beginning to see myself more fully and truthfully. I'm also beginning to see others and God with God's own eyes, the eyes of compassion. Contemplative prayer which seeks stillness and communion with the divine presence all around us and in us, is helping me to move from studying life for myself to living it for others.